Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome to our European Open and Digital Learning Week. I will be chairing the session today. I am Denise Whitelock. I am the Vice President Research for Eden. I'm also AI Lead in the Institute of Educational Technology from the Open University, where the speakers are from today. We've got a lot going on and a lot has happened already. There were sessions yesterday and Tuesday, so here's the code if you want to find out more. And also the sessions are recorded and you'll be able to view them later. The theme this year for this Open and Digital Learning Week is the Human AI Partnership, Transforming Teaching and Learning. And Eden is a very well-connected network, and this event's organised in conjunction with the United States Distance Learning Association, also the Flexible Learning Association of New Zealand, and the Open and Distance Learning Association of Australia, and with joint efforts from the Asia Pacific Online and Distance Education Week. So we will show you now what's been happening, so that if you want to have a look, you can come in later when the recordings are available. And perhaps you might want to look at the white paper we've been writing about the Union of Skills and Digital Education, Mutual Implications for Practice and Policy. And there have been other sessions, strategies to maintain well-being in the digital education ecosystem, and Gen AI as an educational gatekeeper. Today, it's us co-creating the future, human AI partnerships in curriculum design, teaching and learner support. Tomorrow, it's MOOCs, and Friday, 2 sessions, bridging the AI gap in teacher education and pedagogical innovation and assessment in the age of AI. I want to draw your attention to our NAP webinar that will take place in December, and that's about AI and teacher agency, so following the theme. So do read more about this session. We've got the code there, and please register if you're interested, and I'm sure you will be. It'll be a good session. I also want to draw your attention to our annual conference, which next summer will take place in Porto, in Portugal, a very lovely venue. I've been there many times. And just to remind you, and if you've not been to one of our conferences, it is a very friendly family conference. Eden is a big family, and you are more than welcome. And finally, just to say something about our journal, Herodotou, which is an open access. It's a free and open journal. And please take a look. There are some very interesting papers, and you might think about submitting a paper yourself. So without further ado, I want to take us into our first paper. And this is from Thomas Ullmann and Duygu, Bektik, talking about a system that we've developed in IET at the Open University to support course production. Over to you, Thomas.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Denise, for your introduction. I'm Thomas Ullmann. I'm a senior lecturer at the Institute of Educational Technology, and Duygu and I will be presenting the latest research about the use of generative AI for course content production. Today it's just us two presenting, but on this slide you see we are part of a much larger team, which you can see there. We have been working on understanding the potential of using generative AI for curriculum production already since 2023. We now went through a couple of iterations and phases, focusing on specific aspects of curriculum production. So for example, we focused on generating new course content, reusing existing course materials, and also focused on working with a diverse set of curriculum production teams. But today we want to talk about our most recent findings. But if you're interested in the earlier stages, we published about that. There will be a slide at the end of the presentation, and we also published at the Eden conference and Eurodel, so I can just reiterate which are great places to publish papers. So this slide, what you're seeing now is, it basically shows that we currently see a huge uptake in teachers already using generative AI. It's used for all sorts of teaching tasks, from planning and creating lessons, engagement with stakeholders and assessment, and just to name a few. So researching the use of generative AI, if you could go back one slide, for curriculum production is a timely research topic. And while we see on the one hand that Gen AI is widely adopted, our literature review revealed that there is still a lack of empirical research on the use of generative AI in teaching. So as this is a technology that's likely to have a significant impact on education, it's very important to understand it better. So what we did, and this is now the next slide, please. Thank you, Duygu. Is to understand it better, the use of generative AI for curriculum production. What we did is that we developed a generative AI tool and shared it with course writing production teams and evaluated its use. So just to give you a flavor of the task that typically needed to be solved when writing course materials, have a quick look at this table here. So to write module materials, the course writing team needs to think about the big questions of the course, learning outcomes, to maybe write a course outline, develop activities, assessment, instruction, and a couple of other tasks. And so Gen AI can have a role here. So we also need a tool that's flexible enough to support this great variety of writing tasks. And so what we developed is a tool called Scribe, which we developed from the bottom up, involving various stakeholders. And Duygu will now talk about Scribe in more detail. To you, Duygu.
Thank you, Thomas, and hi, everyone. It's good to be here to talk about Scribe that we are very keen to share further. So we developed Scribe, which is our in-house generative AI assistant for content creation and course production. Scribe is designed to help course teams draft, adapt, or repurpose learning materials efficiently while staying within the Open University's secure infrastructure. So it's a tool built for authors to give them a space to explore what Gen AI can do in course production. But why Scribe? Why not just use ChatGPT or other public LLMs? Because course materials are sensitive and often under copyright, so we needed an environment where data never leaves the OU, and Scribe was developed through this strategy. So it was developed through a bottom-up and user-driven process. We co-designed it with authors, tested it in real course production, which fed into the design improvements and additional new functionalities, and we built it as a walled garden for safe exploration. Our vision was simple, safe, secure, built for the OU. So Scribe runs on our Azure OpenAI subscription with region-specific data controls, and it allows staff to experiment and co-create with AI while meeting our institutional data protection and ethical standards. So here is Scribe, here is the main interface. Our authors, basically content creators, sign in using their Open University credentials. And once they are inside in, they can access bespoke assistants tailored for the course they are authoring or tailored for specific production tasks. For example, it could be a quiz writing assistant or one for learning outcomes. So each assistant is pre-configured with guidance on tone, style, context, so our users and authors can basically focus on the creative part. And what can you do with Scribe? You can do quite a lot. Scribe can support almost every writing task in production, from generating unit titles, maybe mapping learning outcomes to existing content, drafting sections, restructuring content, summarizing existing text, designing quizzes, to even develop a learner personas. Here you can see some example outputs coming from Scribe. Just to remind, these are obviously not polished outputs. In a way, they are structured drafts that authors can then refine when they are writing courses or producing curriculum. So the focus is always on supporting human creativity, not automating authorship. And here is the upload. So there's the upload feature, which is particularly useful. And for each conversation, our users can upload relevant files that they think it's essential for Scribe to know. It uses RAG, retrieval augmented generation, meaning the AI can base its responses on the course documents, materials ingested or uploaded, rather than using generic public data. So I've shown you on the previous slide how users can upload their files to each assistant chat. Alternatively, or in addition to, assistants can be fed with a whole set of documents behind the scenes. So any chat within that assistant would already have knowledge of the ingested materials. And this picture here shows that, you know, these particular assistants here, those two assistants, has multiple files already ingested in them. This could be an entire module or entire qualification of different modules, or anything authors think it would give, it would make an addition for Scribe to use, an additional knowledge. We also, with the new version of Scribe, let our users to create their own assistants and add any files, documents themselves without the need to reach us every single time. A key feature we've recently worked on is the prompt helper. So Scribe suggests prompts dynamically based on your conversation history and the assistant setup. And this helps users who may be new to prompting and guiding them towards effective requests without needing expertise in prompt engineering. So this slide shows how Scribe currently works in practice. We call it a Scribe in action cycle. So what we do is we provide an initial live demo to our potential users, potential course authors. Then they start using Scribe with access to guidance documents that we've written. And then throughout this process, we act as AI buddy in case there are any issues raising. And in the meantime, our authors, users keep diaries of their experiences. So what we do is we evaluate those diaries that they hold and also look at the prompt logs, the user prompts on the system. And we use those two data to improve our training as well as the Scribe based on these findings. Before I pass it to Thomas on prompt analysis, I want to show some of our users, what do they say about Scribe. It's worth noting that this month is Scribe's first year anniversary. So it was developed back in November 2024. And at the time, it had been tested and piloted by 13 authors in real course production. And as of today, we have 57 registered users on Scribe from all units at the OU. So certainly there's a growing interest. And we can easily say the feedback from our authors has been overwhelmingly positive. So they found it's very effective, saved a lot of thinking time. It cut their task from 30 minutes to 2. And now they would be even reluctant to produce a course without it. So now I will pass it back to Thomas to talk about some prompt log analysis. Thank you.
Thank you, Duygu. And yeah, just to quickly say, we already have 92 participants, which is great. And yeah, I just said we will have question answers later. If you have any questions, put them in the Q&A tool, and we will take it from there. Thank you very much. Right, to continue, what we also did next to the diary analysis, we looked at the user prompts, and we captured more than 700 user prompts. And when we sampled from that about 120 prompts and did a thematic analysis. And the analysis showed that there are several common tasks that just occur over and over, but also that there are many tasks that are unique to the specific requirements of a course author. So here you can see the high-level questions or high-level themes. So for example, the analysis of the prompts revealed several approaches to generating course content. So several different prompts have been written that ask the AI to write course content that is relevant to a heading. So a heading is a short phrase from a table of content, which is provided by the user. The prompt writers specified the old content. So this could be either via RAG or pasted into the prompt window. And the heading together with instructions about and information about the length of the content was then used to generate course content. Another approach was to generate course content that was to ask the AI to generate content based on specific topics. So for example, prompt authors wanted to know about challenges of blended learning, technological innovations, evaluation strategies, or the link between well-being and performance. Other strategies to generate course content were to be AI to ask to rewrite content, to summarize, to suggest new topics, or to find definitions. Besides generating course content, another common task was to create course activities. And they used, again, various strategies for quiz creation, such as basing questions on ingested documents, or they pasted course content and used that for creating quizzes, or from defined terms. There are a couple of activity-related prompts that focus on tasks like reflection, collaboration, application, often tied to the very specific course content. We have learning design prompts, for example, creating personas, which represent target learner groups, which help the writer to tailor the course content more effectively. And we saw lots of follow-up prompts to refine AI-generated text, for example, for content length, tone, or terminology. But so these are the common ones, but where we saw also there's a long list of less frequent prompts, which covered a diverse set of writing tasks, such as specific learning outcomes, adapting the voice, connecting course section, or emphasizing the need, which all emphasizes the need of a tool to be flexible, flexible as the scribe design is. We have a look at the main findings to summarize, and I'm happy to talk about the diaries, Duygu.
Yes, yeah, I mean, I can just say a word like the diaries provided obviously qualitative side of the picture. You know, they revealed authors' time savings, or, you know, the reduction on the cognitive burden of initial composition, basically, you know, removal of the blank page syndrome. But obviously some challenges too has been mentioned, like the tone control or a desire for more critical engagement, which is interesting. You know, in other works, scribe worked, yes, but authors wanted it to think with them, not just for them. So yeah, that's from diaries what I could say, Thomas.
And from the analysis of the prompt logs, we found that Scribe was employed across a wide spectrum of curriculum design tasks. This breadth of application highlights the tool's versatility, but also its capacity to support various stages of pedagogical planning. From studying the prompts, we also see a long tail distribution of tasks. And what I mean with this is that the majority of prompts are concentrated around a few themes. as outlined before, but there's also a significant number of more niche or specialized needs. And this shows also how important it is that the tool can cater for these diverse requirements. And this is something to design for. The analysis of the prompts also showed that the users frequently embedded very detailed pedagogical and domain-specific knowledge into their interactions with Scribe. And this suggests that the tool served not merely as a content generator, but also as a medium for articulating and refining expert instructional strategies. In conclusion, that's the next slide. Our findings contribute to the growing body of evidence that Gen AI can play a meaningful role in the development of curriculum, but that's based, or provided that its integration is guided by principles of usability, transparency, and pedagogical alignment. Using both prompt logs and the diary reflection, we were able to capture not only what task authors attempt, but also the processes, challenges, and strategies through which we learn to work with Scribe. So this is very useful. But the work also needs to bigger issues, and what we need would be a theoretical framework that integrates generative AI, human-computer interaction, and learning analytics to enhance the development of such tools. So for example, we could consider to make use of student data for course offering, and also we need to take into account the different levels of AI literacy that staff may have, which can affect the output quality and also requires professional development. Okay, so this is it from my side. So we have now learned a lot about the teaching side, and now Tim will talk about the student side. So without any further ado, I hand now over to Professor Tim Coughlan, who's just starting up his presentation. There it is. Great.
Yes, you can see my slides. Okay. Brilliant. Okay, well, yeah, thank you everyone, and thank you Thomas and Duygu for kicking us off. As has been said, I will now focus on the student side of what we've, or the student-facing side of our work with AI. And introduce some work around a project called AIDA, which has been a sort of vehicle for us to explore this in recent years. So the starting point for this work was really colleagues asking the question about what might be the benefits of the Open University having its own AI digital assistant. So we know students will be making use of ChatGPT, Copilot, or Claude, all these other tools. But there seems to be a lot of potential for an approach which is more kind of owned or managed by the universities, where we have the ability to control this and use it in more embedded ways. So yeah, some of the key reasons around this might be that this could then draw more directly on the OU materials and only using approved sources, unlike say the kind of responses we might get from ChatGPT. So more control over quality potentially. That this would be more embedded and built in to the study, so it would be available and built into the module website. And there was more potential for tailoring there because, you know, again, with the embedding into the OU studies or other university studies, the access to data about the student and so forth would be easier and safer perhaps to achieve. So this was kind of some starting points for the project. And that led to a construction of a plan of work and some research questions. Most broadly, how can generative AI and large language models provide ongoing personalized support to students while they study. Within that, we were interested in a few different concepts. So engagement with learning, how did it change their engagement with the learning? Things like progressing through the course and assessments. The perceptions that our participants, and this would be our students and our staff, would have of this AI digital assistant, and whether they change through use or experimentation with this. The types of interactions students choose to have with AIDA. So similar to what Thomas and Duygu were showing, clearly we can learn a lot by putting this system out there and experimenting and getting it in front of students and seeing what their behavior is. And if any individual characteristics or different sort of subpopulations of students had different perceptions and uses of an AI digital assistant. So I'm presenting this on behalf of a really large team. Obviously, the other presenters today have all been involved in this work, and quite a number of other people within the Institute of Educational Technology, but it's almost a sort of whole university project in a way. We have the technical developers, the people involved in the platforms and the more digital services end of things, and our Knowledge Media Institute with their expertise in AI and developing AI-based systems. So yeah, lots of people involved, and I'm just the one kind of sharing the message today. The project we ran, we call it AIDA on Open Learn, and that's because we used our Open Learn platform as a basis for this, as a first way of introducing an AI assistant into OU Study. So distinct from our virtual learning environment that our degree students, our formal students use, we have a platform, Open Learn, which I guess some would be familiar with. It's a free online learning platform with lots of courses. And I think some distinct elements of that make it interesting is that those courses don't really have a tutor or interaction with academics or teachers built into them, so the AI digital assistant can play a particularly useful role, I think. But also it was a good test bed, so it's a place where we can experiment and then learn from before we try this out with our degree students, our formal students. And there have been a range of activities around this. From initial consultations, which just demonstrated a really simplistic assistant, to surveys to gather students' perceptions, and then a lot of testing and iterative work on the assistant with students, but also with staff to understand their views on it. And just a few features of AIDA, just to illustrate that. So AIDA is embedded in each page of the course and available to students to use to understand more about the page or the unit or the week of material that they're currently studying. So it's aware of the context of where the student is in the course. And they can have that dialogue as you'd expect with any kind of chat-based system. It does, however, do some other things. So because it's embedded into the materials, the users can also click on an individual paragraph of the course and either ask for that to be simplified, expanded upon, or to start a conversation around that paragraph of materials. So we really wanted to look beyond the idea of this just being a chatbot, and that's one of the ways we've done that. And it also facilitates kind of formative assessment and revision. So through kind of quizzes and the sort of flashcard approach, which supports students to sort of actively engage in testing and enhancing their learning. So as I say, we began with a lot of surveys, which gave the participants a sort of inkling of what AIDA might look like before we'd really got to grips with building it. And our initial findings were really quite interesting. So just over half the students were very positive about the idea of an AIDA for their studies. And then there was a minority, so 19.7%, who were very negative about the idea of an introduction of an ADA. And we found that these did cluster around specific demographics and populations. So the highly critical participants were largely older. They hadn't used Gen AI before, but had higher education levels. The supportive group, so the ones that sort of in the middle, were also again primarily older, with some Gen AI experience. It's important to note that at the Open University we have a lot of mature students, so our average age of our students is in the 30s. But the highly supportive cluster within this population were younger students with lower education levels and high Gen AI experiences. So that gave us a bit of an insight that there was different views, as I'm sure many of you would expect, and something about the populations of students that those related to. One thing we did find that was encouraging once we'd started testing an ADA and evaluating with students was that even in the small scale trials, we could see quite a significant jump in the perceptions of ADA once participants had got to play with it. So once they understood where we were, our vision and kind of what this was aimed at, we tended to see quite a good increase in the positivity around it. So this was a fairly small initial study with 18 participants, but we found a significant effect that the participants were more favourable towards ADA and towards the kind of quiz features that I'd shown after they got to use it. So that was very interesting and encouraging. And we also gathered quite a lot of qualitative data and also sort of survey data using scales around what they wanted from this AI digital assistance. And this slide just kind of shows a whole range of things that I won't go into, but I think it's worth noticing that personalization and relevance was very much the top response. So the idea that this could provide a more personalized form of study, and also that would be different from what they could get out of sort of ChatGPT or similar tools, because this was again embedded with their studies and had more understanding of them as a student. The availability of this, so obviously compared to a human tutor or academic, this tool could be available around the clock and be there ultimately when our students are studying, which can be any time of day or night and in any location. So that was also attractive. And there was also an interest around the potential that this made study more accessible. So that could be related to the needs of that student. So it might be modifying the way that content is provided to them. It could even be around language. So the potential for an assistant to translate materials and provide them in other languages. So I'll focus now on our main project trial, which was a randomized controlled trial that we ran with 2 of our OpenLearn courses, where we integrated ADA and also had 2 groups within each, one that had ADA available and one that did not. And there were 163 participants in total who took part in this study, with 115 who got access to ADA, and as I said, a control condition of 48. And what did we find here? Well, one of the, again, encouraging findings was that the students who were given access to ADA spent longer on the course and visited more pages. So there's a sense that it increased their engagement. I think this is an early study and there are a lot of caveats about it, but we're finding evidence that it was to some extent aiding their engagement and adding to their engagement with the course. We also found through their own self-report knowledge gain that they had higher knowledge gains with ADA than the control group. So after the test period, they reported those students who had ADA reported a stronger understanding of the course materials than those without. And we didn't see necessarily this negative sense of people who didn't want an AIDA. So obviously, again, it's a different study with voluntary participation, but 96% of those involved did want the AIDA for their study. So very positive. And this slide kind of illustrates some of the reasons why that's the case. So essentially they felt this was supporting their learning, particularly when they got something wrong and they had that active engagement. They could return and reread and expand the text and so forth. This notion of it expanding confidence, I think, is really important. And I particularly like this quote: "I don't feel embarrassed to ask stupid questions." I think this is a huge part of what makes generative AI useful to students, where they don't feel comfortable asking questions of an expert or a human educator. Again, 24/7 support. This notion of trust and accuracy, which lends itself to the idea that the OU or any university would manage its own use of generative AI because it increases the trust there. So yeah, some of the interesting reasons why they appreciated it. One of the things I'll just focus on a little bit before we finish off is this idea of roles that AI can play. So we asked, obviously, the students which element of AIDA they enjoyed the most, and the quiz role was very popular, but all the different roles and features we'd added in were positively received and used. And there's a whole bunch of other things they'd like AIDA to do, like, for example, supporting their assignment submission process. So when they're in the, close to the deadline with their assessment, to have some support and around that. We also didn't, AIDA in this case doesn't have any access to student records or data about the students, so it doesn't actually understand them on that level, which obviously opens up the potential for a lot more personalization. But yeah, just to finish off, a bit of a focus on the staff perceptions of AIDA. So this is educators and educational researchers and what they felt about it. And we did a smaller study where they got to use it. Some of the themes coming at it from their side, I suppose, concern about how it's used around assessment and providing feedback. They felt that some of the answers it was giving, it was providing a mark and they weren't sure that was appropriate. The way it could or was limited in the way it could encourage and develop the students. So obviously a human teacher would provide more support at earlier stages perhaps, and then remove that kind of scaffolding later on. So they're interested in how that could be done through the AI. And then the ways it communicated. And also as an overarching theme, how does this AI support fit with the tutors and the module team and everyone else involved in teaching the students? And there's been a lot of talk about the idea of roles that AI could play, and I won't spend any time on this, but Mike Sharples has written quite a lot about the different kinds of AI roles that AI can play. So I think that's a starting point for us when thinking about this. Not just a case of a generic kind of AI assistant, it's a case of there being many different potential roles and thinking about the benefits of those. And within AIDA, I think you can see hopefully on the left of the interface, we allow students to select from a variety of roles. And in a way, that's giving the student the agency around this. But there's no reason why the educators or the people involved in teaching that course can't be in charge, or at least have some influence over the roles that are available to the student at any given time. And I think that speaks to many of the things that the educators were concerned about. And actually, we presented a paper at Eden Conference earlier in the year, which explores this in more detail. So yeah, in conclusion, most of the students were positive about having an OU AI as digital assistant because of this idea that it could provide 24/7 support. increased personalization, accessibility, and that there is this sense of greater trust and accuracy in a solution that is managed by the university itself. We're seeing early encouraging findings that this helps to engage students in their study and that their learning will benefit from it. I think, as anybody who's engaged with the wider narratives around AI will know, it's kind of a mixed picture. We think there's a lot of potential for learning gains, but also potentially laziness in terms of the way students study. So I think it's an open question, but we're seeing some positive results. We're also seeing that younger Gen AI experienced students with less prior education were the really positive ones here. And as I said, views of this become more positive as people use it. So perhaps some of the concerns kind of go away when people realize the kinds of solutions that are possible and how they might genuinely support their learning rather than detract from it. And finally, I think from the educator point of view, a focus on the different kinds of roles that such an assistant can play is really important, and really getting creative as educators to think about, well, how do I want the AI to behave in order to support learning? And I'll finish off there and hand over to Thea.
Thanks, Tim. Just a second to share my screen. Yeah. Well, hi, I'm Christothea Herodotou. I'm a professor of learning technologies and social justice at the Institute of Educational Technology. And my talk is about the design and impact of a student-facing dashboard. So a quick overview. I'm going to mention briefly what we know so far, why we designed this dashboard, the journey we followed towards designing it, what the dashboard looks like, and the impact on students. So what we know so far from the existing literature is that there are several student-facing dashboards with diverse designs and features.
Sorry, Thea, just to say there's a little pop-up on top of your slides. It says continue to share.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Thanks. Thanks, Tim.
Yeah, that's great.
I was looking at my other screen. That's why I didn't notice. It should be fine now, isn't it?
Yeah. Perfect. No, yeah.
Great. Yes, so there are several designs of student-facing dashboards. What I want to stress here is that they are of special value to online students, and this is because they study from a distance. They may feel demotivated or isolated because everything is by themselves without the social interaction the way it takes place on face-to-face institutions. Most of the dashboards we've seen on the literature present descriptive elements like engagement with the virtual learning environment and number of clicks. Very few designs at the moment present alongside descriptive elements other features. In particular, we've seen limited focus on dashboards that can actually change the study behavior of students and motivate them to take action to improve their study habits, their skills and performance. Given this gap in the literature, we decided to design a dashboard that presents a range of features, not only descriptions of performance, but also predictive elements, and more importantly, prescriptive elements. In particular, what we have in our dashboard is a set of actions the students can take in order to improve their performance and make sure they succeed in their next assignment. Also, again, drawing from what we know from the literature, there are not many studies examining the impact of dashboards on specific groups of students. So most of the studies in the literature, they're focusing on neurotypical students. What we tried to do was to engage students with diverse learning needs into the process of design and evaluation, especially focusing on students with disabilities coming from deprived areas and with Black ethnicity. So the reasons why we designed a dashboard for online learners I decided to answer the question by bringing up the scenario of a student. This is an imaginative student and a scenario we came up with. It's not a real student, yet the information is very real because we've heard several times from students saying similar things about their online experience. So this is Carl. He's 34 years old. He's studying with the Open University for a degree in business. He's the first in his family to be at the university. He also works full-time and has family commitments. Sometimes he suffers with anxiety. He has started studying. He has received lots of emails, packaged with information, and his attitude so far is that let's see how studying goes. So his thoughts about this activity, you can see them in the speech bubbles. He's thinking that there is so much information. What do I need to study and when? He's also thinking I keep losing track of where to find the information I need. It's too hard to keep myself motivated. He's wondering whether he's on track, whether he's studying enough. Overall, he's in doubt as to whether he has made the right decision to join the Open University and study for a degree. He's also feeling confused and considering giving up. So given this profile of students, we thought that giving them access to their study progress and giving them recommendations of what to study next is a way to help them navigate through the process of studying in higher education. So the journey we follow to designing the student-facing dashboard is as follows. This is not the first time the Open University is designing a dashboard for students. Maybe the journey started 10 years ago when we started designing a tutor-facing dashboard. This dashboard is now available to all of our tutors and is used extensively, I would say, by tutors to identify who of our students are at risk of failing. So that dashboard presents weekly predictions of whether a student is going to submit their next assignment. It has been tested widely, I would say, over the last few years. And in all of our studies, we found increases in student performance and retention in the range of 7 to 10%. We found also that this is particularly beneficial for students from low socioeconomic statuses and ethnic minority students. So we took those lessons learned, the functionality of this dashboard and the data availability to design a student-facing version of it. So what we did is that we engaged with 30 students. 1/3 of them declared disability or they were from a low socioeconomic status. We ran a number of workshops in which we asked them to review different data points and decide which of them are more useful for them. So data points is information that the university is gathering over time and is available in our systems. Also, we gave them some mock-ups of what a dashboard could look like, and we asked them to tell us what they would like and why. So we systematically analyzed their responses, and we concluded as to which features are needed or students would like to see on a student-facing dashboard. So these features are gathered here. I grouped them into descriptive, predictive, and prescriptive elements, and also some other information around achievement and highlights. So the descriptive elements I present information like the interactions of the student with the VLE or their tutorial attendance, also which material they have interacted with so far and which they haven't yet. Predictive features is their individual predictions of whether they are going to submit their next assignment. And this is where AI comes in because this is based on machine learning algorithms. The third type of features is prescriptive elements. And here we give them direct access to support through their tutors and the student support teams through a contact button. They can press and send an email to those to tutors or student support teams. The second element that is prescriptive in nature is the automatic generation of material they should study in order to pass their next assignment. And this is again based on machine learning and based on what we know students with similar characteristics have studied in the past and help them pass the module. In addition to this, we have recommendations by tutors as to which material is key for passing an assignment. The difference between these two types of recommendations is that the automatically generated ones are personalized to who the student is, while the recommendations by tutors is generic and the same and applicable to all of the students. The other element is achievements in the form of a badge that can help students feel motivated to study, some highlights as to what they've achieved, and some feedback they can give about any technical issues they may face when interacting with the dashboard. So what does this mean for Carl, the example I gave you before? So imagine you are Carl visiting your dashboard. And here are the thoughts of Carl when he's looking through his performance. He's thinking that it looks like I'm using the module website less than previous weeks. I haven't realized that, so maybe I need to spend more time studying. Then he's looking at the predictive features and it's showing to him that he may not be on track of passing his next assignment. He's only got 4 weeks to submit and he's also feeling a bit panicky. So he's not sure what to do. But then he's looking at the prescriptive features and then the dashboard is reminding him that you can actually contact your tutor and ask for help. Or you can go through the recommended material and use this to start preparing your assignment. And actually, he goes directly to this material and sees how this can help him with his submission. Also, he's looking at the badges he received so far and he feels nice and encouraged. And this is actually recognizing his hard work. So I hope this example, hypothetical scenario of this student is actually illuminating how this kind of dashboard can help students, especially those who are not used to how to study or who are not familiar with their study patterns and what they should do to progress and succeed in their studies. So in terms of the impact of the student-facing dashboard, we've been working on it for the last 2 years. Last year, we ran a small-scale study with 30 students studying at year 2 of the university. So it's level 2 undergraduates who participated in that one. And then this year, we scaled it up to more than 300 students in 6 modules. In both years, we use surveys, interviews, and the propensity score matching approach. We are now analyzing data from year 2, and because the analysis hasn't been finished yet, I chose to present findings from year 1, noting though that it seems that year 2 data is replicating and reinforcing the outcomes of year 1. So the methodology is that we focus on this one module. We invited in particular students with diverse characteristics to join the study, and we had a significant representation in the activities. We got 23 survey responses and 10 interviews. The key findings now from the analysis of surveys and interviews is that the majority, if not all of the students perceive the dashboard as being very useful. Especially they found useful the recommendations of what to study next, the fact that it kept them on track of their progress, it helped them stay organized, it motivated them by seeing weekly online engagement and gave them an easy access to information about their assignments. They found all of the features useful, descriptive, predictive, and prescriptive, yet 2 features were very positively perceived by all of the participants, and these were the recommended material and the contact your tutor, so the prescriptive elements in a way. Also, the motivation to study was shown to be correlated with the recommended material and the most interacted form of material as shown on the dashboard, suggesting that this type of information can actually motivate the students to study more. The motivation now to take action, we were particularly interested in that, in whether the dashboard can actually motivate students to take action and respond, especially to a negative prediction about failing or not passing their next assignment. Indeed, the students said that the dashboard motivated them to study and improve their performance. Actually, a student said, I wanted to check on it and beat previous week's progress. Also, the dashboard enabled them to become aware of learning. They knew whether are likely to pass or not their assignment, for example. It also reminded the students of the material they missed to interact, and this was a way for them to go back and study what they've missed. The dashboard gave them a structure to learning by keeping track of their progress and providing suggestions for what to revise next. And overall, it was seen by many students as a roadmap to success, like a means to achieve a good result and a good outcome. The two lessons we learned from this process, and I want to conclude the talk with those two, is that it's very important to help students become more aware of their study patterns. We shouldn't assume that all students have similar skills when they join higher education or when they start studying, because there are students that are lacking, for example, self-regulation skills. And to help them keep up to their studies and progress, these kind of dashboards can actually enable them to develop the self-regulation skills needed. Also, it's really important to design dashboards with prescriptive elements that would actually guide students to do specific things. As in this way, you are not only providing students with information of what they've done in the past or what will happen in the future, you are also giving them a pathway they should follow in order to succeed, and ideally disconfirm a negative prediction, for example, that they won't going to submit their next assignment. This is a set of literature that is relevant to the talk. And I would like to thank you for joining and ask you for any questions. I think this is actually the next step of the process. So I would just stop sharing and give it and move back to Denise to coordinate that.
Thank you to all our speakers. And so we'll all give you a virtual clap, but I'll do a physical one. Well done. Can I ask participants, could you go to the, on your bar, taskbar, there's a Q&A button to insert your questions. But to start the ball rolling, I'd like to ask each of our groups of speakers a question. Let's start with Scribe. This is something I really want to understand, and perhaps the audience does as well. We've got a RAG system because we're protecting our IP. We're protecting our courses produced at great expense at the OU. But as a user, I'm making a new course. I'm looking at old materials produced before. How can I refine that text with outside information? Do I need to do that offline and then bring my new text into Scribe to say, I want a new topic here that I want to quiz on or whatever? How do I do that? And how can we move forward with that?
Excellent question, Denise. And I'm sure Duygu could also answer it, but maybe I make a start and then you can chip in. This is actually one of the scenarios that we studied in the previous year, where lots of courses where already exist materials, and you need to bring them and to update them, make them relevant again for a new audience, or update them because we have outdated materials and so on. And so the idea is that with different techniques, using generative AI, that you can quickly create updates of those courses. And RAG is one of the techniques which were quite useful for that, because we can upload all the course materials into a secured environment, which through the enterprise license that we are using is not shared for training with Microsoft, but it stays, the copyright stays within the Open University and is protected, which is very important. And the users are very much in control of what exactly they want to upload, so that they then query or prompt over those base data or curated data set, that they can just get the answer they think is relevant for them. And on top of that, it provides a facility to see where content is coming from. So you can always go back to the original source, you can see what the authors wrote there. You can cite their work, you can talk to them, and you can build your new content based on what is there in a proper way.
Thank you, Thomas. Duygu, have you got something to add?
No, I think Thomas has been really clear about it. So, like I mentioned when I was showing, the IP is important. So that's the main reason we had Scribe. So nothing goes out, and you can, or the OU authors can basically upload any Open University materials without the worry that it would feed into the actual ChatGPT outside the OU. So that's a really good sense of security for authors to easily, go there and explore it, because you are a bit hesitant with the public Gen AI tools to do that, because all these are sensitive information, but Scribe basically offers a sandbox, a secure, safe place. So yeah, that's all I want to say, Denise. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Sorry,
I
yeah.
see in the Q&A, not a question, but a great thumbs up. So well done. Well done, team. I'd like to ask Tim a couple of questions, actually. You mentioned about the roles, which I think are immensely important, not just to support our students, but to help us understand how we, even in face-to-face situations, support our students. Tells us a lot more, tests our pedagogy in many ways. So I'm not sure if you have the details, but what roles were used the most in the first scenario when we had the Open Learn course?
Yes, I think the in effect there's a default sort of chat role that gets used a lot, and then the quizzes I think were the next sort of most popular role. I think because they have an obvious I think students find them obvious, but all the roles were used and got positive feedback. So, for example, the role that's more around sort of, I suppose, I mean, people talk about it as a sort of Socratic tutor, but we didn't call it that in the end. But in a sense, it's pushing the student to, construct their argument and probing their understanding. So I think those roles were also used and got better, positive feedback. But yeah, I think students were kind of drawn to the obvious, which was, give me a quiz, that'll help me, So yeah.
Thank you. And I guess, this was a one-off use. And like any piece of software, you have to learn the system a bit and see what suits you. So it would be nice to have a group of students maybe trialing it with different courses or different sections of a course to see how, with familiarity, what do they find most useful. I think that would give us great feedback. But to specify the roles, I think was really very, very important for not just for the students, but for us as teachers as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So I can't see another question, so I'm going to move to Thea. The dashboard's all the pieces of work are very impressive. And of course, we're always trying to move forward, aren't we? Always. We've learnt this, let's move forward. So what I was thinking of, the first question is, how can we improve this feedback from your data and from what you know of the student use?
Is a question as to how we can improve the dashboard or generally our practices?
How we can improve the feedback on the dashboard to the student.
Well, what we know so far is that giving them solutions to their to potentially bad performance is something that does work, and pinpointing to what they need to read is definitely beneficial. And this is not a generic thing. We're talking about personalized support through the material they need to study. Someone, of course, would suggest, do we have enough material to accommodate all different learning needs? So maybe one future direction is the provision of additional material for those students we see that they are falling behind or they keep having predictions that are not positive. For example, we could use Scribe or Ada to reproduce an activity or produce a personalized version of an activity or a piece of text that would meet the exact need of a student, especially if we get some input from the student, because at the moment the dashboard is unidirectional. The student sees the information and gets in touch. But what if the student was saying, yes, I'm not going to submit because I don't understand X, Y, and Z? Could the system reply saying, okay, I created a tailored activity for you. Would this be a good starting point to start working on your assignment? So I feel that there is a loop that is missing at the moment. And potentially we could achieve it by connecting different tools together.
Yeah, absolutely. Congratulations on what you've achieved. And one of the things that came to mind when you were presenting was exactly what you said. If we could give the system could give some feedback if an action had been taken that had been recommended. I think that would tap into the motivation really well.
Yes, so the one thing I didn't mention because I thought it was not as important, if you read the recommended material, you get a badge saying well done for reading the recommended material. But we don't know whether the recommended material had an impact on the outcome. We just know whether this was read or accessed by the students. Yeah.
Okay, but we could go back to look at those who did the reading. Did they do any differently in their results than those who didn't?
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
It could be the next step, definitely, yes.
But thank you. And we've got some questions now, which you can all have a look at.
I was just going to raise, so I answered both questions. It was for Scribe whether authors can also upload any materials other than the OU materials. So basically, I responded, but for the sake of other participants, maybe yes, they can upload anything they think that it's useful for the conversation. There are multiple, use cases we are working on right now. For instance, one of our authors are uploading the whole set of AI documentations that's been written by the OU, anything that will be useful to answer students' queries on AI knowledge, for instance. And there are lots of use cases we can have. We can upload anything other than the OU materials as well. So yes, to that question.
I see in the Q&A, you're absolutely right, Bea. I cannot see the questions. So if the team can see the questions, please go ahead and answer them.
There is one more question from Estella, who says, I come from non-English speaking country and I'm interested in applying AI in my university. Where would you suggest to start from? Where do you see that your university teachers applied most and can be applied in other countries? Also, can you recommend any open source tools that can be adapted in other EU countries?
Do you think we could take that question bit by bit? And
Yes.
the panel could come in. So if we start with the first part, non-English speaking country, want to apply AI in my university, where do you suggest I start?
If I could have a first go, and I think that's how we started our journey. We started using freely available open source, it's not open source, free available generative AI tools like ChatGPT. So actually the first study we did before we had Scribe was just to test the generic LLM as to what it can produce for us to help our teachers and the production of material. So maybe I would say the first step is to define the objective, why you want to use AI, and then start experimenting with those open models. So what we learn from the process is what kind of prompts we should design that would give us a good answer for our purpose. So there is a lot of iteration and trial in understanding what to write to ChatGPT, let's say, in order to give you a good response. So this could actually be a good first step to understanding how these models work and whether they can actually help you achieve specific tasks.
Thanks, Leah. Anything else from the panel with that?
With regards to second language, what we noticed, for instance, when we were working on Ada, we haven't set up anything for different languages, but it is already able to respond in a different language. We tried Turkish, we tried Arabic, we tried all other languages that you can think of. But LLM can actually already does this without us doing anything further. So I just encourage you to maybe use a public LLM to test it out as well. Just use your own language and see how it works.
Which
Yeah.
version were you using, perhaps, Duygu? The audience might like to know that.
Good question. Tim, was it GPT?
I think it's GPT-4 that
wasn't it? Yeah.
underpins. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, I was going to say something similar, Duygu. I think clearly you have to test it, and I think the accuracy and quality in different languages is variable, because if you think about it, it is trained on a very large kind of corpus of information from the internet. So the more information that's on the internet in that language, the more smart it is, to put it in a very simple way. So obviously with English or something like Spanish, for example, there's a huge amount of text in that language to draw on, but with smaller based languages that there will be less. But I think it's really I think we're usually pleasantly surprised about how good it is. Yeah.
If I could add something to that, which I learned recently, we are all aware that different large language models producing different outputs, but it seems that there is variation within the same large language model. So I was trying to use a scoring system for assessing the quality of a video. And I was doing it on my computer, and a colleague was doing it on her computer using the exact same version of Gemini. And the scoring, the total score was completely different. It was 16 out of 34 in my case and 26 out of 34 in her case. So we asked the LLM why you are giving us such a great variation. And the answer was that the prompt needs to be very specific to allow me or enable me to restrict my variation. And also we should be giving examples in our prompt to restrict even further the potential responses of the LLM. So I was thinking that if someone wants to use a large language model for automatic scoring, should be used with big caution, especially because of this variation. No matter how specific the criteria, the marking criteria are, you may still have differences every time you run the exact same prompt. So I was thinking in my case that maybe I need to run it a couple of times and use the average score instead of just one go and get whatever it's giving me. Also, I accompanied the scoring rubric with qualitative descriptions, so I could understand why she, I don't know, the system was scoring as such. But this, in a way, entails much work for someone that may want to do this thing automatically.
Can we recommend a tool to start with? I know we have to try many, but is there one you think would be suitable to just start with that might be a little bit easier to use. Or mind you, they've all improved so much. They're all different from when we started.
Yeah, maybe not a specific tool, but I think what was of tremendous help in our context was that we very early on tried to find a tool where we basically were clear about what are the issues with copyright. So when you start engaging with other people at the university, you will very often hear anxious questions about, can I use it? Can I use it with confidence that whatever I upload, that this is the right thing to do, and I'm not getting in trouble with policies. So to create this openness and this space for creativity and to experiment, we at the source try to start with this problem of, yes, you can upload materials and we can ensure it's not going to be used for training. We separate what you upload, what is copyrighted, and still you can use the generative AI tools. This is very important for the context of course generation. So I think it's about finding the tool for the specific scenario you're aiming for, and if it's about reusing materials and is it about copyright, it's worth spending the time first to find what other tools you can use with good conscience there. Yeah.
Thank you, colleagues. And we have a question from Bear, who used to work with us, very successful member of our team. Lovely to have you with us today, Bear. And she asked, do authors upload material not created by the OU?
Yes, we answered that one, Denise. Sorry. So it was yes, and the answer was yes. So we answered that question already.
And Bear talks about the idea of the walled garden,
Caught our
which
attention,
we're
yes.
creating. Do we have any more comments on that?
No, not really. It's exactly. Being it walled garden is what is attractive to our users as well. So they feel safe and secure in that sense. So that they can easily test and try things, look at their course content, make changes. We used Scribe recently for maintenance of modules, for instance, and that made life of of updates of the authors really easy in that sense, because we would uploading publications, recent publications, and changing the units with the outdated publications were gone, so the new publications was coming as a new insight for that unit. So yes, the walled gardens saved our life in that sense.
Great.
Just to add, from the
yeah.
student-facing point of view, I think it's also about ensuring quality and monitoring. So if we have a scenario where a student is just using Copilot or some other tool, even if that is supported by the university, we won't be able to see what their discussions with it, and we won't be able to see the quality of the answers it's giving. So we won't know if the students are getting, say, a wrong response to a question, whereas when we have a solution where everything is going through the university, then we can monitor that and enhance. And perhaps again, thinking of the roles, there might be some roles that don't work very well, and we should remove them. We shouldn't promote them, and there would be others where we could say, okay, we know this is reaching a level of quality and accuracy in the responses. So I think that's one of the key things as well.
Thank you, Tim. And I think one advantage that we do have is that we have large student numbers on which to test and to get good, strong, robust data to inform the university and to move our efforts forward in a very systematic way, even when finances can be quite tight. We have another question from Bruno here. So, who'd like to answer that one?
I can answer that one. So we have a question from Bruno. He asks, what is the impact of copyright on the
I don't have a full answer, but I know that, for example, the Welsh government is working with OpenAI because they recognise that Welsh language isn't particularly well represented in the generative AI system in the model. So I think there can be where there is organizations who are interested in promoting that language, they can get involved with large language models, and I assume part of that would be providing an additional corpus of material in the language, for example, to test on. But I think clearly we don't control that, but there are people who are concerned about that, where there's a less represented language.
Thank you. And I'm just going to ask something general to all of you to answer. And I'm sure you're expecting this one. What do you see as the biggest opportunity with AI for teaching and learning moving forward? And conversely, what's our biggest challenge?
Well, to me, I think is the possibility of operationalizing or practically implementing personalized forms of learning, or truly personalized. I mean, understanding who the student or the learner is, what they know, what they don't know, what they struggle with, what they are feeling, and then giving them material in the form and time or pace they want to, that meets their needs. But I think it's easy to describe but hard to implement, because the two challenges is that you need to understand the learner well, and how do you collect this information constantly and consistently, and then how do you make sure you have the material needed that meet their needs. There would be a lot of trial and error per student or per groups of students to design those forms of learning that can actually meet their learning needs.
Yeah, that's a really important point, Thea. As you were saying it, I was wondering who would volunteer to work with us for a year, giving us lots of information like that. Because if you did, I think you'd really understand how you learn as a person as well, and you're understanding your reactions to different parts of the course or assessment, whatever, which people dread. And thank you, Thea. Who's going to come in next?
I want to say the obviously biggest opportunity we see here is the time saving. Academics are busy, authors are busy, they want to do things quickly in a sense, so that they have more time to do other things. That's the straightforward one, maybe. But in addition to this, we are currently, again, having a use case on how you can use different disciplines materials, like a STEM module materials or art module materials, when you are writing a management course. So you wouldn't be able to explore this option unless you have STEM colleagues and art colleagues and business colleagues coming together and discussing, which is not always happening. But what Gen AI or Scribe is providing here, you upload STEM materials, art materials, and it's trying to build a new links there. It's giving you a new idea. So the challenge here, obviously, you need to make sure what's written there, what's coming out of Gen AI, it makes sense and it's accurate. So that's I wanted to say there's a good opportunity, but we need to be careful. That's why the human element is so key in whatever the Gen AI is producing. We should be looking at what is written makes sense, actually, because sometimes it's so convincing that you think that it's true, but it may not be. So yeah.
Very important point, Duygu, and especially as the systems have such an engaging tone now. You really feel they're working with you or guiding you, or maybe telling you what to do when it says, can I do this for you next? And that might not be wise. It's not what we want. Very important point. Tim, would you like to come in, and then Thomas?
Yeah, I was thinking about that, it's finding where the human fits in the loop. So where, this is the challenge, I think. As you say, we can say, well, it will save academics time. But the flip side is, where do they lose control? I think we haven't quite figured out the models yet and it's a shift in the work, and the tasks that academics will do, where perhaps they are spending some of their time thinking about how AI is being used in their course or monitoring what's happening there. That's in some ways a new workload that they didn't have before, but then hopefully some efficiencies that make up for it. So yeah, I think that's a really interesting unresolved problem in terms of the kind of jobs we do. What type of work will we be doing in 5 or 10 years? How will it have changed?
Thanks, Tim. Wish we had a crystal ball, hey? And Thomas, if you'd like to close our session with your comments.
I think was already much said, but just to add to the points that were made about this question, is as Tim said and others have said, it's really about finding out what are the strengths of generative AI. And we see that, they're good in aiding brainstorming, helping with outlining tasks, and, help with maybe adherence to some writing guidance. But we also see that often the answer are a bit generic in a way. It sort of lacks a bit the depth that you would expect, and where the expert knowledge that has to come in to really create a good course. On the one side, of course, it is very easy now to churn out lots of text, but it's still very important to have all the quality assurance mechanism in place to actually make this a course that has not just lots of text, but is actually working for the students and is tailored to the students and to their need, and that requires a lot of context knowledge and pedagogical knowledge in a way. So it is whereas, of course, these competencies don't go away, and on top, it will be, I think, more and more important also to learn these new Gen AI literacies, to really understand also what type of content I get back and where do I need to intervene and correct the generative AI, and really get the sense of the feel for when something is just not right, although it sounds very convincing. And generative AI is very good in being very convincing, while might not actually be factually correct. So I think that's a new dimension where all our reflective thinking, critical thinking is again very important, and to learn this in this new context.
So I guess our challenge is, our students or ourselves becoming de-skilled if we're using these systems too much. But will our students and ourselves become better at making convincing arguments? But again, that might not be fully accurate. So I think, as we've no more questions, we'll leave the audience with that question. And to thank everyone who's contributed today. To our participants and audience, thank you for coming. We had a lot of people here, over 80, coming up to 90 people. Thank you for staying with us. And thank you to, I'm going to read your names as I see you across my screen. Thank you, Thea. Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Tim. And last but not least, thank you, Duygu, who always has a glorious smile wherever we are. Thank you. And I hope you've all enjoyed the session today. Thank you, and bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Denise.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Denise. Yes.
And thanks, Denise, for this great moderation. Fantastic session. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.